Welcome to Rock Talks. Today we're talking to Vicky Psarakis, singer of The Agonist. We discuss their latest album, Orphans, the future touring cycle, playing at Cusco at 1,000 feet altitude, and almost everything about her new band influenced by Linkin Park, Korn and Slipknot. Hello, Vicky. Thank you so much for your time and your patience. So sorry again for the
No
delay.
worries.
Welcome to Rock Talks. Thank you so much for your time. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Embarrassing. I'm embarrassed.
Nah, it's okay.
Well, for everybody who's asking why am I embarrassed, because my laptop is about to explode and I couldn't get my questions here. But anyways, they don't care about that. Let's get into the interview already. All right, Vicky. For the last maybe a year and a half,
Mhm.
you were really busy doing these covers on YouTube, right? You
Yeah.
cover some pretty different bands like Korn, Dark Tranquility, Amaranth, In
Yeah.
Flames, and some and other ones. So my question is, which one was the most challenging to cover? Singing wise.
Um, that's a tough question because I like to challenge myself with my covers usually. Sometimes I'll play it safe and just go for something that's already quite easy for me, but usually my goal is to go for something that I can learn from. Um, Just off the top of my head, I would have to probably say the Amaranth cover, just because of the really fast rap screams, which
Yeah.
at the time was a bit of a challenge. Since then, I've done more songs and more stuff like that, so it's definitely gotten a lot easier. But the first attempt that I did on that song was definitely not as good as the final one.
So you mean that cover where you are dressed up as Harley Quinn, right?
Yeah, yeah, that one.
So how long did you take to do all this makeover?
The video or the recording
The
or
video, yeah. Well, all the
oh,
production.
no, the video was done in a day basically. I really keep it simple with my videos, a black background, a few takes and that's it. The song itself, I would say I practiced it maybe 2 weeks before recording,
Mm.
but when I say 2 weeks, I don't mean every single day, like I did a few practice sessions trying to really learn the song because when you're doing fast paced vocals, you have to make sure that everything feels really natural. So if your mouth is blabbing away, and you're going blah, 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 all that it has to become like second nature so you don't think about it and you
Yeah, yeah.
can you can be able to focus on the emotion and not the mechanics of doing it. So with those practice sessions, I memorized the lyrics and then everything was just very automatic. So when I finally recorded it, it didn't take long at all.
Hmm. Nice. So
Yeah.
can we expect more cosplays like that one?
Well, the reason we did that was because the cover came out in November. It was Friday the 13th. And it
Oh.
was after a full month where I was doing Halloween covers. So I was already dressing up during October for 3 different covers. And I spoke to Quentin, who I did the cover with, and he was like, "Can you dress up as Harley Quinn? Because she likes to blow up stuff, and the song is called Boom."
Boom, yeah.
So I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, why not? Let's just keep the Halloween spirit going." Um, I think maybe next Halloween I'll probably do some more
Hmm.
costume stuff. It's a nice month for that.
So a few more months for that. I can't wait. All
Thank you.
right, let's talk about Orphans, the latest album by The
Yeah.
Agonist. In this album, I noticed that you show a new kind of guttural voice, and they sound really low, kind of like deathcore. For example,
Yeah.
on songs like The Gift of Silence and In Vertigo. So my question is, was it difficult to develop this new vocal style for you?
Uh, I wouldn't say it was difficult. A lot of the things with vocals is that there's a lot of experimentation involved. Um, you don't know what you can do or what you can't do unless you try different stuff. And that just kind of developed from a demo that I did. I was like, let me try and do this vocal. And then I shared it with the band and shared it with our producer. And he actually asked if there was a pitch shifter on it because he couldn't believe that I did it. Um, and I, to be completely honest, I wasn't that confident in it, But then getting their feedback and him asking that, is it processed in any way because he couldn't believe it was me. I was like,
Yeah.
no, it's really not. And then and there's plenty of videos of me doing it live too at this point, so people can see that it's real. It wasn't really hard. It was just one of those things where it's like, oh, I can do this too.
So you surprised yourself with that.
Yeah, I'd like to think I surprise myself in general with everything that I do because
Yeah.
I'm I'm quite adamant about always progressing and getting better at what I do. And that means like fine tuning the things I already do, but also figuring out new things I can do, either from a technique standpoint or a songwriting standpoint or anything. So if if the day ever comes where I don't surprise myself, that's when I'll start to get worried.
Yeah, that's why you keep trying new things, right? Twitch, YouTube, covers, own songs,
Yeah.
originals.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's why I said covers for me, they're a way to just really challenge myself because it's not my own song. I'm not creating anything from scratch. I'm just taking it and re recording it my way. And there's a big tolerance for that where it's like, okay, even if someone doesn't really like my take on it,
Yeah,
it's a cover.
it's
It's
a
not my
cover.
song.
I didn't write the song. Not my fault.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And there will always be people like that where I post a cover and then they just write underneath, "Can you cover this instead?"
Yeah,
And
they
it's
throw ideas at you.
yeah, and I'm like, I can't please everyone. I clearly I
Of
chose
course.
this song because I liked it and I wanted to do it. So, um, I can't do everything. Sorry.
That's okay. You,
Yeah.
you just remind me James Hetfield back in '98 when they put out the Garage Inc. covers album. James said something like that. Well, if you don't like it, it's a cover, man. Sorry, not my fault.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, we were talking about the Peruvian gig before the interview started.
Mhm.
Back in 2018, you played actually two shows in Peru, Lima and Cusco.
Yeah.
And plus, you did some tourism, back then.
Yeah.
How was that whole experience playing in Cusco and getting to know all those places?
That was so much fun, honestly. The show in Lima was pretty much like a standard show. It was a festival, a lot of bands, a big stage. It was exactly what we'd expect. I think we had a day off before too, so we just did some sightseeing in Lima. Um, but then the experience in Cusco was completely different because I think the show was in a tent. So it was outdoors, but there was a tent covering it, basically. And yeah, and it was a very small stage. It was packed with people. So it was a lot. It was the exact opposite of the show in Lima, where it's like very tight, um, crowded, very intimate. But I am thankful that we played the show. So we arrived in Cusco. I think we had one day, the rest of the day to rest, and then we played the show the next day. And then after the show, we had a day of sightseeing. But I'm thankful we had the show first because I actually got a little bit sick the third day after sightseeing. I think from the elevation, because
Yeah.
you know this, but the rest of the world doesn't, that Cusco is very high up in the mountains, and I'm anemic, so I already have a low oxygen. Like, my body doesn't get as much oxygen as it needs.
Oh,
So on day 3 of being in Cusco, I got all lightheaded and all this and all that, and I couldn't believe that the show the night before went so well. Like, I didn't even feel it during the show. I was perfectly fine. And
oh,
then it hit me the very next day. So I was like, oh, thank God, it didn't
yeah.
happen during the show. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe because
But
of all the adrenaline, during the
I
show.
think so. I think so. But I also think that the next day we went sightseeing. We went really high up in the mountains.
Yeah,
So, and then on the way back down, that's when it hit me. So I think it's just my body had too much, too much to
yeah,
handle. But that aside, it was so much fun and such a cultural experience.
yeah. Did you get the chance to go to Machu Picchu?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh,
There wasn't enough time for that. And we got to do pretty much everything else aside from that. Because I think
yeah,
it was either we do that and nothing else, or
yeah,
we do 3 or 4 different things instead. So we
exactly.
did
Yeah,
that. Yeah. But hopefully next time.
yeah, yeah. You gotta go there. It's actually like you are in a movie because it's unreal. When you get there, it's like the sightseeing is like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Besides that, the energy of the place, it's like it's crazy. I've been there
Uh,
once. When I was like a teenager, I was 16 years old,
yeah.
and I didn't believe any of that energy stuff. That you learn when you are older.
Yeah.
But I definitely felt it. I was like, man, this is something going on around here. It's crazy.
That's
So
that's awesome.
hopefully next time you get the chance to go there.
Yeah, and actually, fun story. When I got my first laptop, when I was 18, so I moved out of my first like my family home to go study, and I bought a laptop for the first time. Well, my parents bought me a laptop. I put a screensaver of Machu Picchu. That
Ah,
was the first thing, because that was one of the things as a kid in high school that I was like, I want to go there one day, and it was my screensaver for a really long time. So you know, I think one day I'll make it happen.
you will make it happen. I'm sure. You've
Yeah.
gotta think about it constantly
Yes. Yeah,
and
when you
attract that to your life.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. But be safe because it's really high there too.
I know, I
It's
know.
actually like over 3,000 meters over the sea level.
Yeah,
That's
I
a lot.
think and I think I heard that a lot of soccer teams
Yeah,
go up there to train because it's like if you
exactly.
can play there, you can play anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah, exactly.
So I think, next time if I have a trip coming up like to there or anywhere that's like high in elevation, I'll just like train like crazy before before I go.
All
Yeah.
right. So let's go back to the music.
Yes. Yes, of course. Of course.
So is the Orphans touring cycle will continue after the pandemic is over?
I think so. This is a conversation we had with the band too because we are working on new music now. I'm actually going to Montreal next month to record. Um, but we had this conversation with the band where we felt like, yeah, we can write an entire album during the pandemic. I will say that the guys probably have instrumentals worth of 2 albums if we put them all together.
All right.
Um, but I didn't want to do that. I felt like there's no rush for me to go and record a full album worth of vocals and lyrics and all that because I felt like we released Orphans, we did one tour for it, and then the
Yeah.
pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So I think there's still room for us. Like, we only played in Europe and that was it. So it's like those songs still feel fresh to me and to a lot of people out there. So I still want to be able to play them live. So what we decided instead as a compromise is to put out something like an EP, so like a half album.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then maybe next year if things open up again, put out a full album again.
Mm. Yeah, makes sense. Sounds pretty logical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, you only tour for like 6 months, right? For Orphans back in
Not
2020, no, 2019.
Yeah, not even. No, we just we did a few Canadian shows like right on the release, so like 4 shows. Then we did a Europe tour which was 2 months long.
Yeah.
And then we just did another hometown show in Montreal and we played the crew's 70,000 tons of metal and that was it. So like no
Oh,
US tour, yeah, no Japan, no South America. South America was supposed to happen.
yeah.
Um so like the rest of the world hasn't even heard these songs live.
That's
So
crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you did a tour with Ginger.
Yeah. That was the Europe tour.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
So, is there any touring plans for this year or 2022 already?
I mean, we're in talks. We're in talks. Like the South America tour, for example, has been postponed twice now.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we have a really good relationship with the promoter, and we know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when will we be able to do it. And then we do have talks for Europe, for a Europe tour, another Europe tour, or European festivals and all that. But again, it's like, when are they going to let us do it? Because we're also a North American band, so we can't just fly to Europe and play 2 shows and come back. Like logistically,
Yeah.
that we would spend a lot of money and not make any money. So for us to go to
Exactly.
Europe, we have to have like a full month or 2 months worth of touring. Um, and that means that every country needs to be open. Because right now, I know in Europe, certain countries are doing better than others. So if you're a European band, you can totally say, we'll do 1 or 2 weeks in this area of Europe where things are better. But for us, when we go to Europe, we want to ideally hit as much of Europe as possible. So we're just waiting.
Hmm. And what can you tell us about the new music that the Agonists were writing during this pandemic time?
Yeah, it's I would just call it a continuation of what Orphans sounds like.
Mm.
It's dark, it's heavy, vocally there's a bunch of different styles as usual. Um yeah, I think it's if you liked Orphans, you'll like the new stuff too.
Oh, all right. Sounds promising.
Yeah.
Yeah, Orphans was a really good one. I like the album a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No
I
problem.
think I think it was the you know how a lot of bands don't necessarily know what their sound is and then they experiment and they try to find what works for them. And I think
Mhm.
the Agonist has always been a band like that even before I joined. There was always an evolution from album to album and different
Yeah,
elements. And I think Orphans was a combination of the elements that work for the band. There were some
yeah,
throwback stuff
I agree. Yeah.
from, yeah. So a combination of maybe some throwback stuff, some newer elements, and it just created this result. Um, Specifically on more songs, I would say that the album still has a few songs that feel a little bit more experimental and a little bit more out of place compared to the rest of the album. But if you take the rest, like the 75% of it, I think that's the band's sound. And that's what we're going to be focusing on from now on.
Yeah, you can actually hear some lullabies, the album here and there.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a old school The Agonist, but also from nowadays The Agonist.
yeah, exactly. Because, it's like I'm a different person too. I wasn't on Lullabies. So I
Yeah.
think we're never going to get that exact result because it's a new lineup. And also because I think instrumentally too on Lullabies, the guys told me that they went a little bit overboard. They all went crazy. They were like, how can the guitars and the drums and everything just play on 11 all the time? And I think I think that's like a young teenager
Yeah,
mind
exactly.
too,
And
you
one
know?
can tell, and they tried that.
Yeah, yeah. But I think everyone matured since then and I
Thank
think
God.
now we're more about like organized chaos. So we'll have those
Yeah.
moments where everything's on 11, but then we need some moments where, okay, let's relax a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Let's call evolving, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you've been in the Agonist for 7 years already, maybe?
Yes,
Almost?
yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
7 years now.
around that. Would you say that being a girl in a metal band or in a metal world is a better place to be? Or do you still face some macho BS?
I mean, I think I think that's going to happen anywhere, you know. Like okay, so I'm pretty sure every woman in metal is probably tired of being asked, you know, what's it like being a woman in metal? But I think
But
it's
that's not the question.
yes, but I think, you know, it transcends beyond metal. I think the real
Yeah.
question is if you're a woman doing something that is predominantly a male preference, like doing a job that there's mostly males that do that job, you're always going to face a little bit of that macho thing that you're talking about. You know,
Hmm.
it's not just in metal. And I think the problem there isn't that you're a woman. I think the problem there is with the individual that's acting that way.
Yeah,
Because
I
it's
agree.
like, yeah, is your masculinity somehow threatened by me? You know, like the real question is why do people act this way? And not just towards women, just in general. Why do people feel this need to shit all over other people and, you know, play like a tough guy or this or that? It's like clearly you have a problem, not me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's a sign of a small genitalia, like Les Claypool used to say in the 90s.
That's what some people say, yes.
Yeah.
I sometimes I say your mother didn't maybe your mother didn't give you enough hugs, you know?
Yeah, makes sense. But
Yeah.
would you say it got a little better since you joined the band?
Like in general or for me specifically?
Like in the metal world?
Cuz uh I don't like I to be honest like I'm not one to follow in general what other people are doing cuz like I'm in general when it comes to social media I feel like overwhelmed
Hmm.
sometimes and I'm one of those people where it's like if I didn't need social media to post my own things and promote my own stuff, I don't even think I would have an Instagram, you know, or a face well maybe I'd have a Facebook cuz we use Messenger to talk with people, but you know what I'm trying to say. So I don't really keep up with things too much. Sometimes like my friends or my bandmates will be like, "Did you hear about this? Did you see this?" And I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
what happened?" You know.
Uh, I'm busy working.
Um
I'm busy with my own life, man.
yeah, and especially this year I've just been so busy trying to do my own stuff that
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like I don't know what's happening in the world unless of course it's exploded and everyone is talking about it. But my point being that in my own experience, I haven't really had that. I had it a little bit maybe when I was first trying to get into music
Mm.
and I wasn't in the Agonist and I wasn't the singer of the Agonist, which has like I guess a status to it, which I think is like it's incredibly hypocritical sometimes in the industry how who you are and how big you are and how much of a following you have um
Mm.
is sort of representative of people's worth. And it's like I was always a good singer, maybe not as good as I am today, but I definitely noticed a shift in the respect that I got from other people when I became the singer of the Agonist. And I didn't get better overnight, but people's attitude towards me changed. And I think that's what it is mostly in the metal world, that people might look down on women maybe unless there's a specific woman that's proven her worth, let's say, because she's in a band that's super successful and then it's like, "Oh, now we have to respect her." Um which sucks cuz it's like your worth shouldn't be defined by that. You're either a good
Exactly.
singer.
In my
Yeah.
opinion, that's ridiculous because you're a human being. It doesn't matter if you're a singer or a
Yeah.
politician or a janitor.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Doesn't
think your
matter.
worth is defined, by how good you are at what you do. So it's like
Exactly.
to go back in time and to think that there were guys that questioned me on a musician level because I was a girl and because I didn't play an instrument, for example. It's like I don't need to play guitar to tell you that your guitar is out of tune or that you're playing the wrong chords. I have an ear and I can hear it. So you responding to me like, what do you know? You're just a girl that sings. It's not a valid response. Maybe listen to what you're playing, maybe listen to my feedback. I don't need to play guitar better than you to tell you that what you're playing sucks. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Uh, we were talking about our first interview almost 3 years ago. Phoner, and that time you told me that nowadays musicians take so much advantage of technology and they don't work as hard as artists used to do in the 70s or maybe the 80s, and
Yeah.
therefore they don't evolve. That's what you
Yeah.
said to me, and actually that was a headline of the interview.
Oh.
So my question is, does that change a little bit nowadays, or we are even worse?
No, I think we're probably even worse right now. I'm hoping it will change. I'm hoping that it'll just peak at one point and then everyone will get so tired of it and we'll go back to a more organic sound. Um, I understand the value of production. I understand the value of having a really solid mix and that instruments need to be edited and vocals need to be edited. I'm not guilty of that myself. Of course, we go into the studio, there's editing involved, and you want to make sure everything sounds super tight and super on pitch. Everyone does that. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to play those songs live at least to a 90% of the studio version. Um, so I think if you're entering the studio and you need 50 takes to nail one part, maybe you shouldn't put that part on the album. Or, like I think there needs to be a little bit of I don't know, a mindset of like what can I do actually live as well. Unless you're just a studio musician that doesn't plan on playing live. But no, I don't think things have gotten any better, and I think also people's ears, because not everyone hears the same way, not everyone notices mistakes the way like a trained ear does. Like, I'll go to a show and I'll see people freaking out sometimes, and then I'll hear mistakes that other people don't, because the way musicians listen to music is very different than the way that fans listen to music. Um but yeah, I know I'm trailing off right now, but no, my point is I think people need to spend more time practicing and recording a solid take instead of just being like, that's good enough. And then I'm going to edit it and copy paste everything and make it sound perfect.
And then they sound like shit during the concerts.
Yes, yes. And I will say I have been unpleasantly surprised sometimes where I'll discover a new band or a new song from a band and I'm like, wow, this is really good. And then I'll go on YouTube and I'll check out a video and I'm like, ah, that is not a good live performance. And then I'll check
Cringe.
out another video because sometimes I'm like, maybe they just had a bad night, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but no.
No.
But sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised. Sometimes I'll find a band that's just as good live as they are in studio and I'm like, "Wow, this is awesome. They're checking all the boxes."
Yeah, that's the idea, to sound just as good as the record or even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hope for the best. All right, last question, Vicky. Would you like to start a new project using only your clean vocals?
um maybe one day. For me it's mostly about like genre of music and not necessarily the vocal style that I'll be doing. So like to give you an example, like I'm in the Agonist, which is a band that's like melodic death metal. I would call it, with some proggy elements, maybe some symphonic elements at times because of the operatic vocals.
Yeah.
I wouldn't start another band in that genre. So like I don't think I would start another band that's like extreme sounding in any way. I do have a new project that's gonna come
Mm.
out later this year. I'm not sure when exactly, and that's more of like a new metal style of
Mm.
music. But I'm also like doing screaming vocals there too. So it's but musically it's like really different from the Agonist. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what's
I got
important. I could see myself maybe in my 40s or close to my 40s
it.
doing like a prog rock band or something like Led Zeppelin or whatever where I'm just
Mm.
singing, you know. I could see myself doing something like that, but I think now
Me
is
too.
not the time. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I got 10 new more questions since now you mentioned that you have another project for later this year. So do you have some
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, you can ask.
All right.
I can't give away too much, but whatever I can, I will respond to.
All right.
Yes.
Let's try it.
Yeah.
Who are the other musicians on this project?
Yeah, so I can't really say. There's no one that's like super famous or anything like that. So like even if I named them, you wouldn't know anyone really. It's a combination of musicians from Montreal, Canada. Actually, everyone's from Canada. Some are from Montreal, from Quebec, Ontario, you know, Canadian people.
So it's like a mixed band, men, women.
Yeah. Well, I'm the only woman again.
All right. So did you already write some songs for this debut album?
Yeah, it's all done. It's actually it was recorded over a year ago. So it was recorded right after our tour with Ginger.
Oh.
Um yeah, I went back to Montreal and we actually worked with the same producer that the Agonist works with, Chris Donaldson.
Mm.
So right after the Ginger tour, I spent the holidays in Montreal and I recorded the vocals for that album. And we were supposed to, you know, pre-pandemic get things going and film some music videos and stuff like that, but then that happened, so everything got delayed. And
Mhm.
we didn't want to put anything out without having a music video. And we especially didn't want to put anything out during the pandemic because, you know, brand new band, nobody knows who we are and we're
Yeah.
going to put
Bad
out our
timing.
first. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So, yeah, no, it's all ready to go and we're even like writing new songs for a second album at some
Is this
point.
band
So,
signed?
no, not yet.
Hello,
Um
Napalm.
Well, to be honest, so we did reach out to a few labels, but again, during lockdown, it's
Yeah.
impossible to get responses. But I think it's the genre of music that I wouldn't really want a metal label
Hmm.
to sign us, because I see it transcending more into the rock industry.
All right. All right.
So, yeah, it's much more like accessible something you can hear on the radio, but it would probably be the heaviest thing you'd hear on the radio type of music.
Something like Five Finger Death Punch, maybe.
Ish. I like to call it like a combination of like Linkin Park with Slipknot or Korn, you know, that style
Hmm.
of yeah.
Sounds
Um
promising.
Thank you. But yeah, so we haven't, to be totally honest, we haven't really like knocked on too many doors because I'm also just like a little bit like let's see what we can do on our own first.
Mhm.
And so the first video we release and all that is just going to be us and see what we can do on our own and hopefully build more of an organic following and have labels see us on the internet before, you know, we haven't even released anything and we're trying to get a label, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So you plan to release the first video in a couple of months, maybe?
Hopefully. Like I'm not 100% sure because we've made plans and those plans have fallen through so many times cuz it was like we were planning on filming stuff individually and
Ah, okay.
then we find out that like our guitar player from Montreal's like, oh, we're in severe lockdown here. There's a curfew. If they catch us, we're gonna have to pay a $5,000 fine. And we're like,
Well,
we're not doing that, you know. So
yeah.
it's like, keep
Don't risk
postponing.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely this year, but I don't know when this year.
Oh, all right. How many band members? Since you said Slipknot, Linkin Park, maybe you're shooting for a 6, 8, 9 member band.
No, no, not that many. Guitar, bass, drums, and yeah, five people, just five people.
Two guitars, bass, drums, and you.
What one guitar, two vocalists. But
Ah.
yeah, but I did the keyboards on this album, so we don't have a keyboardist.
But during the shows, you won't be playing keyboards and singing at the same time.
No, no, because it's literally like keyboards, like samples and stuff like that. We're not doing anything like piano virtuoso, you know. No, it's like that's why I brought up Linkin Park, because you know how they use keyboards as like samples,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. Yeah, that style.
So the other guy singing is like from these local bands in Canada, or?
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to give out too much, but yeah.
What's the name of the band? Come on. Give me
Not
something,
yet.
Vicky.
No, I would just say, you know, follow my social media and you'll see soon enough.
All right. But for real, sounds really promising because, well, actually, to be honest with you, I'm not a Linkin Park fan. I never liked the band. Even
Aw.
back in the Hybrid Theory days, you know, when I was a teenager, and I
Yeah.
suppose you were a teenager back then too.
Yes.
I wasn't into the band, and actually, Burton C. Bell, the former Fear Factory singer, said something really interesting a few days ago. I don't know if you get the chance to hear him. He said Linkin Park was like Fear Factory for kids.
Oh. To be honest, I haven't really listened to much Fear Factory, so I wouldn't
Really?
know.
Oh, come on.
No.
If you're into samples and key stuff, and go pay attention to
Yeah.
that band. It's really interesting. Also, Chimera from the States. They had a really
Yeah.
really good guy doing samples.
But do
But
they have singing? Cuz that the thing with Linkin Park is like I really love the singing in it, so
yeah, he was really good.
yeah.
I give you that. He was
Yeah.
really talented. I didn't like his voice, but I can tell that he was really really something like from some other universe or something like that.
Yeah,
So
I think what I really liked about Linkin Park was the crossover. Like you said, for kids, I understand that sentiment. But I liked that it was something you would see on TV, on the radio, and all that. And it's like metal, like really really metal bands don't have the representation or the appreciation that they deserve. So I've always been one of those people where it's like if we can have some crossover bands that have, you know, the more pop or mainstream elements, but then they have the heavy elements too, and they can bring over people to heavier music, I'm all
yeah,
for those bands because to be completely honest, maybe if I never listened to Linkin Park or Evanescence or bands like that are like in the middle,
yeah,
maybe I never would have crossed over to heavier music either. So
we weren't doing this interview.
exactly, exactly. So it's like,
So thanks,
even
Linkin Park.
though, yeah, yeah, like I'll admit I didn't listen to them too much after my teenage years, but
Mm,
but for that reason and for I think my experience with them has probably been the experience with a lot of people where it's like they first heard Linkin Park and then they moved over to like Slipknot or whatever and then like
yeah,
heavier and heavier and heavier. So
yeah,
it's like if that didn't exist, maybe these people would be listening to like pop rock radio right now,
yeah. It's
you
like
know?
a bridge to get
Exactly.
some other places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, the biggest bands or the most iconic bands in every genre or subgenre of metal or any music, actually in general, the biggest bands are the actually who experiment the most, or the ones who break the mold, right? The most.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. Because,
Metallica, Pantera,
yeah.
Linkin Park, Slipknot, you name it.
Because it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if you really think about it, how much metal has evolved throughout the last years, and we have all these subgenres. A brand new band could come out today, and they could just be playing like old school death metal, and like do a solid, fantastic job, and all old school death metal fans will be like, "This is awesome."
Yeah.
But will they be remembered in history? Probably not,
Not
because
really.
they're already doing something that other people are known
Exactly.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to break through, sometimes you have to find a way to bring a new combination and a new breath of fresh air into and create maybe a genre that doesn't exist yet. Yeah.
Maybe you can do that with the Agonist as well, right? Because you told me that you found your sound with this album Orphans, because it's like a mix of early
Yeah.
the Agonist and nowadays the Agonist. But maybe you can add some other elements, some other types of music, and you can reinvent yourself constantly.
Yeah.
And those bands are the ones who keep in time,
The ones
they're
that reinvent.
endless,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will say I think the Agonist has always been a band that doesn't really fit into a specific slot.
Yeah.
We've always been, we'll do tours, for example, and sometimes we're the heaviest band on the tour package, and sometimes we're the softest band on the tour
Yeah,
package.
I
You
agree.
know, it's always been every single album
That's a
does
good
not.
thing, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, but I think for that reason too, we've just been very hard to place sometimes. So maybe by sticking to that right now, that sound, and just like experimenting a little bit here and there, but not completely changing our sound, will help with what you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Vicky,
Cool.
that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time and your
Yeah.
patience as well.